Exhausted after the war, this country once had to rely entirely on international aid packages just to feed its people. At that time, its total gross domestic product was only about 4 billion US dollars. That standard of living was on par with the poorest countries in Africa. With no natural resources, outdated infrastructure, and pressure from major powers, the future looked incredibly bleak. Yet just a little over 2 decades later, the economy had grown 25 times larger. Over the next 30 years, the nation completely transformed, becoming one of the world's leading economies. So what allowed this country to make such a powerful comeback? Today, we are going to explore how South Korea reversed its fate after the Korean War. After World War II, when Japan surrendered, the Korean peninsula was liberated. However, the region quickly fell into intense ideological conflict. Three major forces confronted one another: nationalism, communism, and capitalism. Tensions reached a breaking point on June 25, 1950. North Korea launched an attack on South Korea, marking the start of the Korean War. With backing from the Soviet Union, the conflict forced the United States to intervene. About 20% of South Korea's population became casualties during the war. The economy was almost completely destroyed. The United States provided 2.3 billion US dollars in aid to help rebuild the country. However, the government under Syngman Rhee failed to improve the poor agricultural economy. Corruption spread widely, and farmers were heavily exploited. Syngman Rhee's government grew increasingly authoritarian. He maintained power through repression and rigged elections. By 1960, rice prices had risen by 60%. Unemployment and crime increased dramatically. Protests erupted across the entire country. More than 500,000 people surrounded the presidential palace. On April 26, 1960, Syngman Rhee was forced to resign. The succeeding government was still unable to resolve the crisis. On May 16, 1961, Park Chung-hee carried out a military coup. Park Chung-hee became one of the most controversial presidents in South Korean history. He placed absolute priority on economic development. Park called on the entire nation to tighten their belts for 5 years. He declared a harsh crackdown on corruption. 24 officials and businessmen were executed. Many businessmen were later released after pledging to invest in production. Secret police were used to suppress political opposition. The press was censored and protests were banned. No president had ever held such absolute power before. Lacking natural resources, South Korea focused on developing its people. Students studying abroad were required to return home and serve the nation. A nationwide rural modernization movement was aggressively implemented. A large-scale industrialization process was officially launched. Foreign companies were required to transfer technology when investing in South Korea. This led to the formation of massive family-controlled conglomerates known as chaebol. More than 60 chaebol emerged, including names like Samsung, Hyundai, and LG. The five largest conglomerates came to control nearly half of the stock market's total value. Park Chung-hee nationalized the banking system to control the flow of capital. The conglomerates were forced to focus on manufacturing and exports. In return, the government provided capital, land, and tax incentives. Steel, shipbuilding, automobiles, and electronics were given top priority. This strategy gave rise to what became known as the Miracle on the Han River. The entire society was forced to live under extreme austerity. People were required to skip one meal every week. Imported goods were restricted to prioritize exports. Even though color televisions were being produced, people still used black and white televisions. Exports grew from 32 million US dollars to 10 billion US dollars in just 17 years. South Korea normalized relations with Japan through mediation by the United States. In return, South Korea received loans, technology, and experts from Japan. The United States played a key role in training and expanding trade. South Korea sent troops to fight in the Vietnam War at the request of the United States. In exchange, it received more than 1 billion US dollars in aid and security guarantees. American culture gradually seeped deep into South Korean society. Construction of the Seoul to Busan Expressway began in 1968. The project was completed in just 29 months. Construction costs accounted for nearly 1/4 of the national budget. This highway strongly boosted industrial production. After 20 years, South Korea had become an export powerhouse. On October 26, 1979, Park Chung-hee was assassinated. The country fell into instability for a short period of time. Thanks to the foundation already in place, South Korea quickly recovered. By the end of the 20th century, South Korea joined the group of newly industrialized nations. Per capita income surpassed the average level of the European Union. The dominance of the chaebol also created serious consequences. Social inequality became increasingly visible. Small businesses came under heavy pressure. An aging population became a major challenge. Today, South Korea no longer faces hunger or war. Instead, it faces the consequences of its own success. South Korea's story is a lesson in sacrifice and discipline. There was no miracle, only decisions and the price that came with them. The future now raises new questions for this country. Today's South Korea is the result of harsh choices made in the past. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss more history videos. Thank you all so much for the support you have shown to the channel.